Hello everyone, this is Zach Weiss, and today I'm bringing you the first Omega Speedmaster Thunderdome. Now, as you might have known, we've done a couple of these for Tudor, and now we're switching over to another brand, Omega, and a little known watch called the Speedmaster. That's of course a joke. Speedmaster is very well known, and there's been, 10,000 different references. We have here but 3 that we're going to talk about. I'm joined by Ed Jelley, contributing editor, Griffin Bartsch, contributor, and Garrett Jones, photographer, all who have Speedmasters. Ed, I know you've owned your Speedmaster the longest. Why don't you tell us about your watch and what it means to you?
So I bought this Speedmaster 8 years ago. I bought it when my first son was born, so I got that whole fun, tied in with the kid being born watch. Mm-hmm. It is the reference number ending in .005, so it's got a Heslite crystal. It came on a bracelet, and it's got the 1861 movement inside. And this is gonna be tricky because Speedmasters are pretty it's an incremental game of small changes. So we're really.
Yes. We don't have necessarily the most diverse selection at the table, but they are all different.
Now you're teasing sequels, so
yeah,
we'll get there eventually.
We'll get there. Garrett, why don't you tell us about yours?
Yeah, so I had my eyes on a Speedmaster for the longest time. Finally got in a position where I was able to pick this one up from Blake. It is the current generation, reference ends in 001. It's the Heslite on steel. With the newer style bracelet, but the old non-quick adjust clasp.
And finally, Griffin, you got that watch about 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, so speaking of Blake, this is actually Blake's watch. And it is the current generation Speedmaster. It's I don't know the reference at all, but it's the 3861 white dial Speedy. And it's the newest Speedmaster here. It's the newest Speedmaster reference here. And it's the furthest away from the classic Moonwatch, but it is a real step in the right direction in my opinion.
So let's start there. Why is it a step in the right direction? What is the improvement that this new white dial has?
Well, I've always had a bit of a thing for white dial Speedmasters. I think it probably started when the second I think it probably started when the second silver Snoopy watch came out, which was the white dial with the luminous Snoopy and the "what would you do in 14 seconds" written around the edge of the dial. And that watch really caught my attention in a way I didn't expect. And it started sending me down this rabbit hole of white dial Speedies. And there's a real history to it, totally aside from the history of a Moonwatch. The first really one that caught on, the first steel white dial Speedmaster that I became aware of after the Snoopy was a very limited edition Mitsukoshi Speedmaster done for a Japanese department store with a panda dial, and it was like, that is the coolest watch I've ever seen.
Yep.
And then the problem became most white dial Speedmasters, as soon as they come out, sell out, get wildly expensive on the secondary market. And this is the first one where they're basically being like, yeah, we know you want this. We know you think this works, and you can actually go in and get it. I think that's a real step in the right direction, as I said, because for someone who wants a Speedmaster but doesn't necessarily want the most traditional Speedmaster.
Yeah, so new as of 2024, there's finally a white dial that is just available. I think also one of the issues with the Mitsukoshi ones was, I believe a lot of those were actually aftermarket kind of mock-ups that were available on forums, because the originals were few and far between.
The originals were few and far between, and then they were selling for $40,000, which invites anyone to just be like, oh, let's get a white dial in this steel seconds hand, and all of a sudden my $4,000 Speedmaster is a $40,000 Speedmaster. That's tempting for any scammer.
Certainly. Okay, Ed. Perhaps as the owner of the oldest Speedmaster, which puts it closest to the moon landing.
Okay.
What do you think about the history of the watch? It's the lore of the Speedmaster. How does that play into your enjoyment of it?
I don't know. I mean, I'm a fan of space generally. Read my space books. Watch The Right Stuff. Great book. A lot of Apollo 13, a couple Speedmasters on screen, but I don't think that it was really just because of the moon or any of that fun space stuff. It was kind of just like when you're shopping for a watch in like a certain price range, it's like hard to not consider the Speedy. And I think for me, like it was like my first real Swiss luxury watch, and it just hit the right price and it hit the right kind of vibe that I was looking for, and I ended up going for it. So I don't know. I mean, as being the closest to the actual moon-worn watch, I don't know how much that played into it. Like, marketing is great, but you know, I'll leave it at that. You can make of that what you will.
You bought it new?
I did. Yeah, I bought it new.
Do you recall what you paid for it?
Yeah, I paid $3,600 for it.
$3,600 for a new Speedmaster.
Yep.
Times have changed.
A little bit. Yeah. Would I buy it again today? I don't know. Well,
I mean,
it's a bigger pill to swallow.
Do we know the current price for a Speedmaster on steel bracelet?
Current price steel bracelet Hesselite is, I think, $7,000. Okay. With the new clasp.
With the new clasp.
And it's about $1,000 more for a sapphire sandwich equivalent.
Times have changed. Times have changed.
Which does make it, you know, as you said, that hit the right price at the time. It's a very different value proposition today than it was 6 years ago.
Garrett, why did you want a Speedmaster? And in terms of your collection, what does the Speedmaster represent?
Yeah, so the Speedmaster for me is always like, I grew up, you know, loving space and went to like the Air and Space Museum in Alabama as a kid and just always kind of fascinated with like what was outside of Earth, really. And so the Speedmaster for me, when I got into watches, was the perfect combination of like childhood love and watches combined. And like when you think of iconic watches, there's a few out there that you could argue are maybe more iconic to watch people, but to everyone that's in kind of the space ecosphere that knows it, like the Speedmaster is the most iconic watch. So for me, it was kind of just a step of like, all right, I'm really into watches. Let me actually kind of start climbing the ladder and buying nicer pieces compared to what I had historically owned. And just, you know, a lot of things lined up. But for me, it was and still is the Grail watch for me.
And so it's fulfilling the desire you had.
100%. Yeah, I mean, it's really nice to wake up in the morning, put it on, just be like, all right, cool. I hit a point where I could buy the watch that I wanted. What more do I need? A lot more watches is the answer. But
I was gonna say, you just told me out there, you got like 2 more plans. So.
Well, yeah, but that's a later issue. Right now, that's all I want.
But I think we all have that moment where there's that first watch that is the one that kind of sates us for now and probably is the hit we're all then chasing over and over and over again forever.
I mean, I currently don't own a Speedmaster, but I have owned 4, none of which are represented in this diverse group of Speedmasters. But when I got my first Speedmaster Professional, which was the first model, I forget the reference number, it was from the 90s Tritium dial, first one with an open case back. So sapphire on the back, Hesselite on the front, beautiful watch, still had the like copper tone movement in it. That was the same thing for me. That was like, this is, you know, double or triple what I've paid before. And this is the watch I really, really wanted. And I find Speedmasters just to be like a blissful design. I don't know. They're minimal in their way and purposeful, and mostly unchanged, barring white dials, you know.
But even this, it has the step dial. It has all the hallmarks of a Speedmaster going back to the 1960s. And I think that is one of the things that is really special and appealing about the Speedmaster is even when we talk about watches that have stood the test of time and whose designs have stuck around, like you think about, I don't know, a Rolex GMT Master. Actually, you put a modern Rolex GMT Master next to a vintage one, they're entirely different watches. And there is something really appealing, at least to me, about taking a Speedmaster bought in 2025 and putting it next to a Speedmaster bought in 1974, and they look functionally the same, barring a couple of small details. It really feels like you can grow up wanting that watch and actually get it.
And so in that comparison, there's also another interesting point. It's not just external, it's internal that they're very similar. So you would have had the caliber 861, I believe, back then, or is it still the 18?
I think it started 861. Then this one's 1861, and now we have moved on to 3861.
And of course, before all that was 321, and that's
And those are the grails. Nobody has the 321 here. But so the 3861 was actually probably the biggest departure. Like this generation Speedmaster really marked a kind of a new generation Speedmaster. That generation had been, you know, I don't know, like a good 20 years or something, probably very similar. So tell us about this movement. I don't know, Garrett.
Yeah, so when you went to the newest generation, really it's minuscule changes that just fundamentally make it entirely different. So you picked up an extra 2 hours of power reserve. They added in, I think went from 18 joules to I believe it's 26 now. But fundamentally speaking, like the watches are still very similar. It's just been a series of small improvements over the years to eventually has led to an entirely new movement that makes it what it is today.
And these do have the coaxial skimming. Yeah. Can you explain the coaxial skimming?
I mean, loosely speaking, what the coaxial escapement is it's a development of the Swiss lever escapement. And like the Swiss lever escapement, it was developed in England, just throwing that out there. But what it does is it's an escapement that minimizes the friction in the movement. I mean, a typical fork in an escapement is basically sliding off the wheels of the teeth of the gear in the escapement. And a coaxial escapement minimizes that sliding by adding in a second wheel and then letting it hit off of it. So the impulse of the escapement is also driving the escapement and in a way that is less damaging over time. And we could talk about the fact it's probably not necessarily as dramatic an improvement as some marketing exec in Bern might have you believe. But what it does do is over the life of a watch, it dramatically reduces the wear on the watch. And it means you don't need to get it serviced as much. It doesn't need as much lubrication. And it will just last that little bit longer with a little less intervention, which for a watch that most people aren't actually going to take care of how Omega would want us to take care of them, is a really good addition to the watch.
They're also master chronometer now. Metis is certified. That is a big, step forward in terms of certifications. Has to do with magnetization as well. As the non-chronometer Speedmaster, I don't know. How do you feel about that?
I feel left out.
Okay.
No, if it's a manually wound chronograph and the moving seconds hand is so small and you can't stop it. There's no hacking seconds. So like, if we're talking about a little bit of extra accuracy, like I'm not gonna miss that. So like, I'm okay with it. I did have to get this watch serviced once. Went to go wind it up and hit the chrono pusher and it just clink, stopped. So I don't know, maybe it's 5 years after I bought the watch, it needed a service, which is like pretty spot on for what they recommend for service. So, I mean, I haven't, you don't get to see it. I don't have the sapphire back. Like it's just in there and it's doing its thing and like, I'm fine with that.
Yeah. If you were to buy it again, would you pay $3,600 for that model or closer to $7,000 for the new features?
I'd keep the 3600. I feel like that's a pretty fair
price.
Pretty fair price.
Okay. Yeah. Let's quickly talk about the bracelet. Now you're cheating.
I'm
cheating.
cheating.
You don't have the bracelet you're supposed to.
I'm gonna lose this section of the Thunderdome.
We're not really doing. I'm not doing a very good job of kind of like getting out features. We're really just going over Speedmasters at this point. But yeah, so the bracelet was another big kind of step forward for these, or was it?
It was. Yes, it was. Because I have replaced mine with the new bracelet. I have everything except for the micro adjust clasp. So the bracelet that came with mine was like just really middle of the road, straight. It was kind of ugly. It didn't have micro adjust, on the fly. It was just ugly. And I'd wear this watch on NATOs a lot. And then when this new bracelet came out, I found out that it could fit on the older case because the lug shoulders are like ever so slightly different, but like I'm totally fine with the fitment of this bracelet and the end links on the older watch, and it hasn't come off the bracelet. Like I don't think I've worn this thing on a strap since I bought the new bracelet. So they're gonna win. That's definitely like I will bow out for that. Like I can't even defend it because I went out and got the bracelet to be like them.
And so you have the bracelet, but you're not wearing it.
Yeah, so I have worn the Speedy on the bracelet maybe twice, maybe 3 times. It's joked that the Speedmaster is just a strap monster, and that's the case for me. I mean, I'll swap out straps 2-3 times a day just to go take a wrist shot and make it look different. But I mean, the bracelet is great. I like the quick adjust clasp. I'm not gonna spend the several $100s it is to replace an upgrade, because 90% of the time I'll wear it on a strap that, either a nylon NATO or a rubber, and I go from there. I'm fine with it as it is, but it is a major improvement over the prior generations.
Mm-hmm. So it's really a point for all Speedmasters. Strap monster, can't go wrong with a strap.
Yeah, I think that what is interesting is I mentioned earlier that the Speedmaster has mostly been a fairly static object over the years. And that's the one place where the Speedmaster has evolved pretty dramatically, is they've changed the bracelets pretty consistently every few years through the whole run of the watch. And I think most people would agree that the bracelet you got initially on your 1861 is pretty much the worst one they ever made. And this one is just, I mean, this is up there all of a sudden with some of the best bracelets on the market. It's so comfortable, it drapes so elegantly. It's not just that the links get smaller, contract as they go down, it's that they also get, the diameter of them gets just a little bit tighter, and it comes down into this really small, old school clasp, and it just feels perfect.
It looks like a vintage bracelet, but like it feels thoroughly modern in its construction, which I think why it wins. And like, that's kind of the Speedmaster's whole story, really, is like, it was, when I bought this, it was like, oh, you're buying a new vintage watch. Like that's pretty much, with the headlight crystal, you're getting a new vintage watch. And that's one of the things that I'm glad they did make feel modern, is this bracelet, because it's great.
No, I agree. I know that bracelet well, and that was not a great one. This one, I almost got another Speedmaster just because of it, because it was just so beautiful. All right, let's quickly go around, and call this the ending arguments, because we haven't really tried to have an actual Thunderdome here. Yeah. Why should somebody go for your reference Speedmaster?
I think if you were to go for this reference, you can get into a Speedmaster and save a fair amount of money and still get, like, I think 95% of the same experience. So like, watches are expensive, and if you want something that you're gonna plan on having for the rest of your life or something, like, and you can get in at something that seems like a great value, then go for it. Of course, this has been discontinued in place of the other one, so like, you can't go into an AD and go buy a new one of these in this reference. But if you could, I would say, I got in at a good time and like no regrets.
Okay. So most of the style, aesthetic, and everything else, less price, questionable availability, but they also made 1 billion of them, so probably out there. Okay, Garrett, your turn.
So going from Ed's generation to mine, you pick up a few of the more vintage aesthetics, the step dials, the dot over 90 on the bezel. So you get closer to a true Speedmaster that would have been in the space era. Okay. But you get the better movement, tiny bit extra power reserve, which you're realistically not gonna notice. But if you wear a different watch, maybe you don't have to completely rewind your watch. And you get newer technology, which is always better. And like Ed's admitted, he replaced the bracelet with my generation bracelet. So clearly it's a step in the right direction.
Yeah. Okay, give us an argument.
So I'm gonna say this is not, if you're gonna be a one watch guy, which a lot of Speedy owners are, if you're gonna go and buy a Speedmaster and that's gonna be the watch you own, don't buy the white dial Speedmaster. Buy the one Garrett has. If you're only gonna have one watch and it's gonna be a Speedmaster, that is the one to have. But if you're like us and watches are a big part of your life and having multiple watches is a big part of your life, this is just a great twist on the classic Speedmaster concept. It gives you something a little different, makes it feel a little more modern. This is the Speedmaster to get if what you want is a Speedmaster that feels a little less everyday utilitarian. This is the watch that's a little dressier and it's a little bit more stylized. And so it's if you're ready to move in a slightly different direction.
Mm-hmm. The Speedmaster for somebody who already owns a Speedmaster. Your second Speedy. Makes a lot of sense. I think, viewers at home, I think you need to let us know what your favorite Speedmaster reference is. What Speedmasters do you own, if you happen to own one? which one should we attempt to pit against each other again in the future? It's kind of hard to put these watches against each other. They are the same watch ultimately. And so I'll just say the winner was the Omega Mark 4.5 because it has a Lemani 5100 movement. It's not represented here. No, there is no winner. Let's be honest. Speedmaster is the winner. Speedmaster is the winner.
The real winner was the Speedmasters we made along the way.
Yeah.
You are the winner when you buy your own Speedmaster.
Yeah. And what a great note to end on. Please let us know your thoughts below. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe if you can, and we'll see you soon.